Hi everybody, it's Ade here from Skidmore Second Hand Tyres. Welcome to part 31 of the boat restoration. When I left you in the last episode, I just fitted the centre thwart and those knees that I'd made from the oak, and whilst I was doing it I thought these screws don't really seem to be gripping a lot, and I suddenly remembered about the aft seat buoyancy chamber, and I thought, I wonder if the same thing's happened here. So after a couple of days doing some other bits and pieces that I had to do, I decided today to get the old jigsaw out, and this is what I found. Oh, we've got more mud in the making. There were quite a few holes in the bottom of this buoyancy chamber, or around the sides. Obviously over time the rain has got in there. This is more than just happened because of the boat being upside down. They're absolutely saturated. So I'm going to do the same again as we did for the aft seat, and replace the wood inside, and that will make the thwart more solidly fitted. Not that it was really going to go anywhere because it was quite a tight fit, but I just think, here we go again, and for the time being I'm going to stick here, because obviously up the front end that's all fitted in now and is solidly fitted together with the sides and the top, so that's not going to go anywhere. Well, this was a bit easier to do because the plank of red hardwood that I had for doing all the other bits and pieces was wide enough or narrow enough to get in one piece. So all I've done is knocked up a couple of squares that are the right size obviously, and glued them in with thickened epoxy, and I've just screwed through them with the battens to hold them up against the underside of the top of the buoyancy chambers. Then when that's gone off, I shall let the squares that I cut out of fiberglass back on the top, weigh them down with something, and Bob's your uncle. Then I can refit the thwart. As it happens, my neighbour, who also owns boats, who has been a little bit of a help with some advice for me over the time, and also provided what you can see of it, a seagull engine over there for when I want to work on it and get it going if I don't like rowing. He's lent me these. It's a big tub of epoxy and hardener, and there's some acetone there as well, which I can then knock up and run into the keel to cover up the bolts, nuts and bolts that are there. That's all glued up now. Tomorrow morning I shall take the weights off and then apply a bit more thickened epoxy as a filler, fill in the gaps, and then she'll be right. That's the tops of the buoyancy chambers glued back in, and I've run some sloppy, slightly thickened epoxy around to fill in the saw kerf that left a gap, and the holes that I had to drill for getting the jigsaw blade in the first place. That's all nice and solid, and I've refitted the thwart, and I've just removed it all because I'm going to just give a final clear up to the keel and a bit of what do you call it, the acetone, to take any bloom off that's in there, and then I'm going to apply some epoxy. Now, a friend of mine up the road, who I was talking about earlier on, he's given me this bulk bin of, I think it might be, I don't know how many litres there's in there, 50 maybe even more than that, from when he was doing up his boat. He was going to give me the roofing stuff, but he said this will be better, and he's done up a couple of boats over the years, and this is some epoxy he used, and it's the same colour as the epoxy that I broke out of the keel when I started clearing out the boat, so it seems quite fitting that sort of thing should go back in again. You mix it 1 litre of epoxy, the dark stuff, to 100 mils of the hardener, which is in the can just beside the epoxy can. And I bought some measuring jugs, which, curiously enough, you go up to 1 litre, and then there's 100 mils marked off. It's actually a 2 litre pot altogether. But I'm going to do it a litre at a time, and I'm thinking that possibly it might take a couple of litres, 2.5 to 3 litres possibly, to fill up above the level of the nuts on the set screws that go through from the keel underneath. So if I mix it up a litre at a time and just pour it in and let it run down and settle as it wants to, I'm going to obviously make sure that the bottom of the keel is level. At the moment it's not, because the thwarts are level with each other, which I think is how the boat will float in the water. So I'm just going to get in there and give it a once over with a bit of sandpaper and some acetone, and then I'll get back to you when I mix it up and ready to pour. I'm on shaky cam now. This is the keel after I've done the pour. I made a bit of a balls up because I put 100 mils of hardener in to a litre instead of 10 mils, and the first lot I poured in, it started smoking. Now I know that it can be quite a violent reaction, and luckily I stayed in the workshop just to keep an eye on it, so I was able to get the hairdryer and put it on cold and wash the area with cold air to stop it from smoking up and heat, and try and cool it down quickly. But at the back end here it sort of turned brown and cracked in sort of crazy bathing sort of effect. But I realised the mistake I'd made, but I poured the 2 litres in by then, but up the front end it didn't go so bad. But I was a little bit worried for a while. Anyway, once that had gone off solid, I got another litre knocked up, and this time I put 10 mils in, which is the recommended amount, and I poured that in on top to fill up the cracks at this end and smooth it off, finish it off and cover up the tips of the screws. But even then it went to gel very, very quickly, and this is the summer hardener, which is supposed to be slower, but by the time I poured in all I needed, there was a little bit left. If I show you that now, which had turned to jelly already in the pot, and it was very hot when I got it out, and that took no time at all really, only a couple of minutes. So maybe because this is a temperature dependent sort of mix that you do, so between 20 and 30 degrees they recommended 10 mils to a litre, but possibly it would have taken less in the end. I don't know, but fortunately it has gone off perfectly fine, and I'm happy with it the way it is. So all's well that ends well. The next thing I'm looking at doing is probably getting the grinder on and just taking the tops off of those screws. I did cut them down. I took about 6mm off them, which by my reckoning would have been enough, but I think they're still a little bit proud. So I might just get an extremely wet towel and put around to catch the sparks and just grind them down a little bit more. Don't need to take much more off. I just think that they'll end up being a little bit proud. And then I'm going to use the West Systems epoxy. Is it West Systems? I keep getting mixed up. Yeah, West Systems epoxy, and put some thickened epoxy over the nuts and the screw heads, and then come back through again with some more tape and cover them over completely. This is really just because they don't look nice sticking up like that, and I think it'd be better like it was in the boat before I took out the old keel runners, bilge runners, that will finish off the boat, and then I shall paint more bilge paint over the top of it all to make it all look nice again. Each of the nuts and set screws as it comes through the bilges has been covered by a little pile of thickened epoxy, and then that's been run over with some fiberglass tape, and it's all nice and set, and they're all smooth now, so it won't really hurt too much if you step on them or anything. I don't think there's much chance of that. It's just they didn't look very nice as they were before, and this is similar to what was there before I took off the old bilge runners. This is just slightly less refined, I suppose you'd say. I've been toying with the idea of actually filling in that inset for the bilge runners, but I think that's just a bit of overkill really. Besides, because it's curved, it's not going to be easy to do, especially all in one hit. It'll just pull to the middle and then run overflow. And of course the keel has been filled in. I've got to file a little way at the bottom end for the drain plug to, because that's now about halfway up. It's not blocked in, but it's about halfway up, so I'll just file a little groove so the water can run out through the hole if the drain plug's out. And then I'm going to give it a quick wipe down inside, and I'm going to run some of the white bilge paint over to give a coat of just for the unpainted parts, and then I shall run a second coat over, probably mostly in the bottom of the boat where it's going to be covered up by the floorboards, and then there's not much left to do on this apart from reinstall the thwart, and I bought a couple of sliding bolts to hold the hatch in. So I'm going to get back to you when I've done this bit. There's something which has been sort of nagging at my mind for quite a while actually, since I first painted this boat, which was well over a year ago. I think the inside was painted, and I've run through and painted in the bilges and the keel, but actually coming out here in this bright sunshine today has highlighted it again. Is that I'm wondering whether, if you're sitting in this boat exposed as you would be in most of the way along the river Stour, because there's not very many places where there's tree cover each side. It's only once you get towards Fordwich and maybe one other spot where you're actually in some tree cover, and that is that it's going to be extremely bright, and given the fact that you're in the open in the summer, it's not going to be the most pleasant of places to be, and I'm wondering whether I should give it a try now, for now, but possibly in the winter I'll paint it grey on the inside, because there is a grey bilge paint that you can buy as well, and I'm not 100% convinced that it'll be a very nice environment to sit in with this bright reflective surface shining back at you. I mean, certainly if I stand here, it's very bright. Sounds like a cat fight going on. All happens around here. It's certainly very bright, and the thought of that sort of glaring back up at you through the day, even if you're wearing a hat as I do, and got your arms covered and all that sort of stuff, I think it'd be quite wearing on you, and it certainly is very bright to look at. So I think I might actually forget about doing any more coating in here and just put the boards back and the thwart and the knees and go on to the next part of the project. So in the glorious sunshine here, I'm going to say thanks for watching, look forward to reading your comments, and I'll see you all soon. Cheerio.